Hello, nerds. Thank you for watching Generally Nerdy. This is the Week in Nerdom for March 5th, 2019. Your source for all the nerdy news headlines. This week in your Week in Nerdom, actually, there's a couple of sad bits. We've got a few things to talk about that are mostly in movie news. There's very little elsewhere this episode, but there's still quite a bit to cover, so let's head up the intro. Kicking things off in music, our first update is actually our first bit of sad news. Keith Flint from the Prodigy, the dude with the two mohawks, took his life this weekend. They found his body in Essex, in Essex County, I believe, and just crazy. So much is. I'm lost for words. I don't even know where to begin with things like this, because so much is out there, so much help is out there for people that it doesn't make sense to me why somebody would do this. But the Prodigy they have a tour set for later this year that is going to bring them stateside. No word yet how this is going to affect that, though this is very likely going to affect that tour. Next, we have a couple of bits from Slipknot to round out music this week. I told you, not a whole lot in all of the categories except for movies, so we'll get there, I promise. But Slipknot, we got a giant tour announcement that's going to take them all across the states, and to coincide with that, we also got the announcement for the release date of the next record. The release date is going to be August 9th, which is pretty close to the beginning of this tour. You can check their website for all of the tour dates, but they're going out with Gojira, Behemoth, and Volbeat, which is a pretty interesting combination. You've got whatever Gojira is with some black metal in Behemoth, and then radio rock Volbeat, and then Slipknot doing their thing. Just very interesting combination, but no album title has been announced just yet for the record, though we will potentially be seeing the new masks later this week, and if that is so, then we'll definitely talk about that in the next episode of Headlines. But we haven't seen the masks just yet. They are scheduled to do a live appearance, which is when we will likely see the masks, because they do not usually do live appearances as Slipknot without the masks. So, until that happens, that's all we have for music news. And jumping into TV news, there's really only one big thing to talk about on this episode, and that's the death of Luke Perry. Luke Perry, for those of you that may not know, is Archie's dad in Riverdale, was the voice of Sub-Zero in the cartoon from years ago, Defenders of the Realm, and also was probably most well known for his role in Beverly Hills 90210 back on Fox in the early 90s. Last Wednesday, Perry suffered a stroke, which had him bedridden and in the hospital since, and he passed away this morning as of recording this. So thoughts and prayers again for another tragic loss in the entertainment world. Luke Perry actually, shortly before, I guess it was a little while before his passing, finished filming his part in the new Quentin Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which actually deals with Charles Manson. And in related news, though not directly, I guess, the original cast for Beverly Hills 90210 just signed on to do the reboot on Fox that's apparently going to happen next year. All of the original cast, except for Perry, signed on to do this. So, very interesting timing for the reboot. TV is a short section this week because that is all we have, so let's hit the movies, and we're gonna hit the ground running on this. Finn Wolfhard is apparently a transplant from the late 80s. He's in a band that sounds like it came straight from the alt-rock movement of the late 80s, early 90s. He's one of the leads in Stranger Things, which obviously has a lot to do with the 80s. And now he is in talks to be one of the new stars of the Ghostbusters 3 movie. Should that come to fruition, he potentially will be starring alongside Carrie Coon, whom you will likely remember from Fargo and The Leftovers. Next, Deadline is reporting that Warner Brothers just ordered a script for a sequel to the Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt starring movie of Edge of Tomorrow that came out a few years back. Apparently, Cruise and Blunt are both supposed to be returning for the sequel, as well as the original director, Doug Liman. Then we have a bit from comicbookmovie.com. They're talking about Oscar Isaac and how he recently threw in his hat to play none other than Solid Snake in the Metal Gear Solid movie that has been in some stage of production for the last 2 to 3 years. Jordan Voight Roberts took to Twitter after Isaac made it known that he wanted to play Solid Snake, and he kind of agrees. He's the one apparently that gave Boss Logic that infamous, or the idea rather, for that infamous picture of Oscar Isaac as Solid Snake, though he did clarify saying that the project is nowhere near the point of casting just yet. Then we have a piece from Discussing Film about the Sony universe of Marvel characters. Man, that is such a mouthful. We're just going to probably refer to it going forward as the Spiderless universe. There is apparently word that once the Sony Marvel contract is up, the contract that gives Marvel the rights to use Spider-Man in their movies, even though Sony technically owns the rights, once that contract is up, Sony's plans are to re-up the contract because it has been pretty lucrative for them. Though that's not to say we won't be seeing any form of Peter Parker's alter ego in any of the Sony movies, especially considering that the Kraven the Hunter movie is reportedly based on Kraven's Last Hunt, which features heavily the character of Spider-Man. That being considered, it is entirely possible that Sony will introduce their own version of the web slinger. Also, Venom 2 is reportedly supposed to be working in Spider-Man somehow, so they're going to have to get this figured out very, very soon. Wesley Snipes might be making his way back into the MCU, reprising his role as Blade in a new R-rated movie. It seems his teases last year of being in talks with Marvel about 2 potential Blade productions weren't just trolls from the actor. Though to what extent the character of Blade will be featured in this new movie still remains to be seen, as reports are saying that it's going to be focusing on his daughter. As reports are saying the focus is going to be a passing of the torch to the character's daughter from the comic books. Next, and our final bit of movie news for this episode, comes from the Fox Marvel acquisition. Feige has apparently been talking behind the scenes about his plans for the X-Men once they join the MCU. And from the sounds of things, the plan is to recast everyone. Well, not exactly everyone, because Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool movies have been lucrative enough for them to make the concession to keep Ryan Reynolds on as Deadpool, though potentially recasting everyone else in those movies, how likely that side of it is very much remains to be seen, though the recasting of all of the X-Men characters kind of makes sense. Next up is gaming, and we only have one update from the gaming side of things for this episode, guys, and it is, go figure, another Mortal Kombat update. As of the morning after I posted that breakdown video for the roster leak, the base roster leak, we got another pretty significant leak that shares Shinnok, Shang Tsung, and Melina as unlockable characters, is the word that they used, quote, unlockable. There have been less reliable sources that have said that the unlockable means that you unlock them through story mode, though I don't know how much I buy that side of it, though I would believe seeing Melina and Shang Tsung and Shinnok in this game somehow. There have also been some more screen leaks, some more people taking pictures with their cell phones, which you're seeing on the screen right about there, and they look great, and I don't know how I feel about that noob Cybot though. And our final section for this week's Week in Nerdom, as usual, is comic books. And first, for comic books, we have the revisiting of the Wolverine audio drama. This series is called Wolverine: The Lost Trail. If you'll remember, we talked about this about 2 months ago here on Generally Nerdy in the Week in Nerdom, no less. This series will see the return of Richard Armitage as the voice of Wolverine. It will be taking place in Louisiana, which means we're also going to be seeing some Remy LeBeau, aka Gambit, action in this audio drama, which is really interesting. Go check the link in the description to see the trailer, or to hear, I guess, the trailer for this next season. Then there's a real quick little update from Detective Comics number 1000, which is supposed to be on shelves later this month, actually the end of this month. As we originally reported, it is going to see the introduction of the Arkham Knight into the DC comic book universe. This Arkham Knight, though, is now reportedly not going to be Jason Todd, as I had feared when we initially talked about this, again, about 2 months ago. No word exactly who it is going to be, though I am much relieved that it is not going to be Jason Todd. And our final update for this week's episode of your Week in Nerdom comes from Rob Liefeld. Remember, we had those sketches, the Deadpool redesign sketches that we talked about a few weeks ago. It seems that those are not necessarily going to be Deadpool. In fact, they're going to be Dreadpool. Apparently, Dreadpool kind of has something to do with the Major X storyline that is set to premiere April 3rd. You'll be able to get issue number 1 on April 3rd in your comic book shop, and maybe Dreadpool comes from existence, or maybe he's from this other weird alternate dimension. I don't know. It seems, though, that this is not an original Liefeld creation in Dreadpool. He has made appearances previously, though whether or not those appearances will be this version of the character still very much remains to be seen. And that's it for this episode of The Week in Nerdom, guys. What did I miss? What should we talk about next week? Let me know in the comments down low. If, though, you want to go deeper into the conversation, jump over to the website, generallynerdy.net. That is the place that you can go find all of the freebies and all of the things that are of interest. Generallynerdy.net, again, is the website. Or, if you want to go have a little bit more fun in the nerd world, there is a Patreon page where I put up more content. Patreon.com/generallynerdy. You have 5 tiered options. More content the higher up on the tiers you go, as is the usual. Again, patreon.com/generallynerdy. If you're new to the channel, you can click the subscribe button. If you like the episode, there's a like button or a dislike button. Either way is cool. Before we click on the buttons and do the websites and all the things, though, guys, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.